So tell me, how long have you been doing yoga for?
I've been doing yoga since I was 19, so it's about 28 years.
Yep.
29 soon.
And then you're a dancer in your 20s?
Well, yoga and dance came together.
Yep.
So I was dancing from when I was about 3, and I became a professional dancer around the age of 18, and I was dancing in Australia in dance companies and choreographing for companies.
Yep.
And then I was introduced to yoga at the age of 19 while I was still dancing, and it was just because I had a bad back, and so I went to see a chiropractor, and he said to me, why don't you get into yoga? And I really found it, I didn't have any sense of what it was about, so I just kind of jumped into it, and then a lot of my friends were doing it, so we were actually doing yoga in Bondi, at the Bondi School of Yoga, sort of an Iyengar school. Yeah. Yes. So we were there.
So much yoga in Bondi.
Yeah. So we were there, and I just loved it after a while. I just loved the feeling that it gave me. And yeah, so I was really into it.
And then you continued dancing, and then when did you decide to become a teacher?
Well, I stopped dancing at the age of 23, and I moved up to this area, moved up to Byron, or actually to Mullumbimby. And at that point, I wanted to keep doing something physical, so I decided to do some classes up here, and I met this fantastic yoga teacher named Louisa Sear from Yoga Arts. That was before Yoga Arts was even here. And I started doing classes with her in a little hall, and then she and I became really good friends. And then she introduced me to Ashtanga yoga, and we would drive up to another hall in Federal and do Ashtanga. And so I was just like hooked. I was just into Ashtanga, doing it twice a day, it transformed my life.
Yep.
And then I met my husband, and I got pregnant, and I started doing prenatal yoga. And I had done quite a few intensives and been quite involved in the initial stages of the Byron yoga community, which was teachers like Lance Schuler, John Ogilvie, Dina Kingsburg, Louisa, another woman named Rachel Hull, who runs teacher trainings now overseas. And John was starting up a studio, John Ogilvie, and he said, do you want to come and teach the prenatal yoga? And that's how I started teaching.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
That was in 1991.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then you began teaching teachers in what year?
Well, my teaching sort of, teaching a lot more took off in 2000. I moved to New York, and I became involved with the studio there. The studio was the Ishta Yoga Studio, and it was run by an amazing South African teacher named Alan Finger. And I had already had 10 years of practical experience by the time I got to that studio.
Yep.
And they were looking for senior teachers, and so they offered me a job there. And then from there, they decided they wanted to revamp their teacher training, and for some reason they asked me to help them to manage the teacher training and recruit people into the teacher training, as well as mentoring in the teacher training.
Right.
So I actually started in 2000 both managing, registering it, and at the same time being one of the main teachers on the training.
Yeah. So how did you do it? Tell me about some of the things that they
Well, I had to get on the phone, and I had to, people would inquire, and I would have to sort of sell to them and say, why was this teacher training so great, and why should they come and do it, and just talk about Al and how amazing he was, and how they would learn to meditate, and they would learn to, do all these really cool things. Plus, they'd be amazing teachers, because we were going to run like a university-style yoga teacher training program, which was one of the first certified with Yoga Alliance, because Yoga Alliance had only started the year before, and so we were one of the first programs to register with them.
In 1999?
Yeah. Right. Well, it was 2000, so we were kind of one of the first.
Wonderful.
And so it was, and the first teacher training we ran was just before 9/11, and I can remember we had 26 people. I can remember all those people that joined, and we were kind of learning on our feet. There were 4 of us teaching in the training, as well as Alan Finger.
Okay.
And we were kind of learning as we went. We were creating the manual as we went, And then the second training was a 9/11 training. So that 9/11 happened, the training started on the 9th of September, and 9/11 happened 2 days later. So that was a very intense group, and we all went through a lot together emotionally and mentally. And those are actually some of the best teachers that have, that are really, actually Twee Merrigan's one of those teachers.
That had come through, that you were teaching with?
Yeah, well, I mentored her, and I was one of her first teachers.
Right.
So yeah, and I would say she's a very successful yoga teacher out there.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So yeah, it was a really it was a powerful thing to do that, to learn. You know, it was like I didn't have a background in marketing. I didn't have a background in recruiting. All I knew was that I just really loved the teachers, and I just felt that we had something really unique to offer. And yeah, I felt confident with expressing that to people who were interested in the training.
Great. And
Yeah.
it's far easier, I imagine, to sell something when you actually believe in it and you're
Yeah.
enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, totally.
Makes it life
Yeah.
much easier.
Well, it really transformed my life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that experience of talking to people on the phone, did you have to make cold calls out to people as well?
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Well, you know, you'd sort of get on the phone and you'd say, you know, am I talking to so-and-so? And they'd say yes. And I said, well, you know, we've heard you might be interested in teacher training. Yes, well, and then you can kind of tell straight away whether someone's going to really chat with you or not. And usually if they're on a list to call, they have expressed some interest at some point.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they might say, oh, well, no, I'm not going to do it this year. But you might have someone who says, oh, well, you know, I don't really have the money, or I'm not really sure. And that's, you know, you're in, because you can say, oh, we have a payment plan, or, well, you know, what would help you to make it? Do you want to come in for some free classes? You know, you can kind of do that sort of exchange and get them in the door. And then usually once they'd met Alan, he's such a charismatic, fantastic teacher, they were just in. You know.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And it's funny what people find, if it's something that they really value, they'll always find the money for it.
It's so true.
Because we all spend
Yeah.
money on different things, and we all value different things.
Yeah, I think also with the money thing, you know, it's like when you're doing a teacher training, it's like it's such a small investment for a lifetime career. And I would say that for me, you know, teaching and teaching teachers, it's like I can't even put a price on what my training has given me. And I didn't do a formal teacher training. I did apprenticeships with Eve Grzybowski and Jenny Groves up here, and Louisa and Dina. You know, I did sort of more personal apprenticeships because we didn't have teacher trainings back then. I mean, Louisa's teacher training was the first sort of teacher, you know, official 9-month teacher training here in Australia. She really pioneered that. And before that, you know, you had to just do apprenticeships. You had to just study with who you could. You had to do 3 weeks here and 6 weeks there. And yeah, so.
Our times have changed.
Yeah, totally.
And then you've done a hell of a lot of travelling around and taught all over the world, and I can imagine there'd be a lot of people thinking, gee, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
I would like to go to Europe for the summer. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, how that starts? Like, what's the first thing you do? Do you have existing relationships with people, or do you find them online and call them up or Skype them? How does it work?
I think the thing that happened for me, and was the real perk of being associated with a major teacher in New York and a major studio and being part of a teacher training. Yeah, so that was kind of the start for me. Was I don't think I could have just gone out there and said, hey, I have something to offer, I'm just doing workshops. It's more that I already had some status as a yoga teacher. And there were people who were involved with Alan who were setting up studios in Japan, setting up studios in Europe. And they knew that I had become a mobile teacher trainer. And so they invited me to come and teach in their teacher trainings in Japan and in Europe. And they also said, well, while you're here, to make it worth your while, why don't you offer a workshop or two? And that's how it started. And what happened was that when I ran that first workshops in Zurich, people came who were studio owners to that workshop. And then those studio owners said, wow, that was so great, we'd really like you to come back next year. And that's how it started. And then, you know, so what happens now basically is that people come to a workshop, they're usually a more advanced student, they might be a studio owner, and that's kind of how it's snowballed. So it really has to do with, you know, that initial invite. And, you know, people write to me and say, well, you know, can you recommend me or this or that? And because it didn't really happen like that for me. I mean, it really was kind of that I'd really worked. By then, I'd been teaching already for 15, 16 years before I got invited to do workshops. And I know it's the same for Louisa and anyone who travels internationally. They've really worked for a long time to build up their skills, to be confident, to be, like well reputable teachers to start teaching internationally. And I know that's a little disappointing for a beginner teacher who'd like to have an international career.
Sure.
But I also think it's like you want to be a qualified quality teacher, and you want to be offering something unique in a workshop environment. If you're going to go to another country, you have to offer something beyond what that teacher in that country can offer. You have to have done the study and done the work,
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we see that here in Australia a lot, where you have international teachers, particularly from the States, and, they come in and people from all over the city flock, to this workshop or teacher training. And, I often think it's a bit of a shame, because we have so many wonderful Australian yoga teachers. It's a shame that, we're not supporting each other a bit more and getting out there and inviting other Australian teachers from different parts of Australia.
I think it's really important. And I just recently did an interview with Bettina from Yoga Teacher Podcast. And, she's really getting out there and interviewing these people who are like the pioneers of the Australian yoga movement. Yeah. And it's so exciting because,
she's doing a great job.
I feel like, we don't realize that the people here have been doing yoga so much longer.
Yeah.
It's really well established here, and that's what I really loved. Seeing the difference between sort of the American yoga scene and the Australian yoga scene is like, we're kind of more down to earth. We're not so into hype, yet we really understand the mechanics, the physiology. I mean, someone like Simon Borg-Olivia, who's a really old dear friend of mine. We trained together, with Shandor Ramiti before he was Shadow Yoga, and he was still teaching Iyengar style. You go to him and you get a lifetime's worth of information to heal and cure your body, which you can take back out there. And, we're so lucky that he's from here. He's available. He's in Sydney. You can go to his class anytime. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
Or you can do an online course with him now. He's just about to promote that. So it's like there's this wealth of information for us here, and we think we should be studying with someone somewhere else.
Very good point.